The Peasenhall Murder, also known as the Red Barn Murder, is a notorious crime that took place in rural England in 1827. The murder of Maria Martin, a young woman who was allegedly lured to a remote barn by her lover William Corder and then killed, captured the public imagination and became one of the most famous murder cases in British history. Maria Martin was born in 1801 in Polstead, a small village in Suffolk, England. She had a troubled upbringing, with her mother dying when she was young and her father often absent. Despite this, she was known to be a kind and gentle person who worked as a domestic servant in various households in the area. In 1826, she met William Corder, a local farmer who was known to be charming and well-liked by the community. Corder and Martin began a secret relationship, with Corder promising to marry her. In May 1827, Martin told her stepmother that she was going to meet Corder at the Red Barn, a remote location near Peasenhall. She was never seen alive again. Several weeks later, Martin's stepmother became concerned about her disappearance and contacted the police. Corder claimed that Martin had gone to London to visit relatives, but her family was suspicious of his story. They searched the Red Barn and found Martin's body buried in a shallow grave. She had been shot in the head and her body had been wrapped in a sack. Corder was arrested and brought to trial in Berry Street, Edmonds, where he was found guilty of murder and sentenced to death. His trial was a sensation at the time, with large crowds gathering outside the courthouse to hear the proceedings. Corder was hanged in front of a crowd of over 7,000 people, and his body was subsequently dissected for medical research. The Peasenhall murder remains a notorious case in British legal history, with many books and plays written about the crime. The story has captured the public imagination for over a century and a half, and it continues to be a source of fascination for those interested in true crime and historical mysteries. The Peasenhall murder is also notable for its role in the development of forensic science. The case was one of the first in which forensic evidence was used to secure a conviction, with the discovery of a bullet fragment in Martin's head helping to link Corder to the crime. This case helped establish the importance of forensic science in criminal investigations, paving the way for future advancements in the field. In conclusion, the Peasenhall murder is a tragic and fascinating story that continues to captivate the public imagination. The case highlights the importance of forensic science in criminal investigations and serves as a reminder of the enduring appeal of true crime stories. The Robison family murders is a tragic case that occurred on June 25, 1968, in Goodhart, Michigan. The case refers to the murder of the Robison family, consisting of Richard and Shirley Robison, their 4 children, and the family's housekeeper. The murders shocked the small community and remain unsolved to this day. On June 25, 1968, a neighbor noticed that the Robisons' dogs were loose and went to investigate. Upon entering the Robisons' home, the neighbor discovered a gruesome scene. The entire family had been murdered, along with the family's housekeeper. The victims had been shot and bludgeoned to death, and the killer or killers had attempted to set the house on fire. The scene was so brutal that it took several days to identify all of the victims. The investigation into the Robison family murders was one of the most extensive in Michigan's history. The police interviewed hundreds of people, but no suspects were ever identified. There were several theories about who may have committed the murders, including a local hippie cult and a former employee of Richard Robison's, but none of these theories were ever proven. The Robison family murders had a lasting impact on the small community of Goodhart and on Michigan as a whole. The case received widespread media attention and sparked a renewed interest in true crime. The case also led to changes in the way that law enforcement agencies investigate crimes, including the use of forensic evidence and DNA testing. The Robison family murders had a profound impact on the community of Goodhart. The town had always been a peaceful and safe place, and the murders shook the residents to their core. Many people were afraid to leave their homes, and some even moved away from the area. The murders also had a lasting impact on the Robison family's surviving relatives, who have never given up hope of finding the killer. Despite numerous attempts to solve the case, the Robinson family murders remain unsolved. However, the case is still actively being investigated by the Michigan State Police, and new leads are being pursued. The case has also been featured on several true crime TV shows and podcasts, and it continues to fascinate and intrigue people around the world. The Robinson family murders is a tragic case that has left an indelible mark on the small community of Good Heart and on Michigan as a whole. The brutal murders of the Robinson family and their housekeeper remain unsolved to this day, and the case continues to fascinate true crime enthusiasts around the world. Despite the lack of resolution, the case has had a lasting impact on the way that law enforcement agencies investigate crimes, and it serves as a reminder of the importance of finding justice for victims and their families. The Texarkana Moonlight Murders, also known as the Phantom Killer case, is one of the most enduring unsolved mysteries in American history. The case refers to a series of brutal attacks that occurred in Texarkana, a small town on the border of Texas and Arkansas, between February and May 1946. The killer, who was never identified or caught, targeted young couples parked in secluded areas outside of town, leaving 5 dead and 3 injured. Despite an extensive investigation, the case remains unsolved to this day, and the identity of the Phantom Killer remains a mystery. The first attack occurred on February 22, 1946, when a young couple, Jimmy Hollis and Mary Jean Larry, parked their car on a lonely road outside of town. A masked man appeared out of nowhere, brandishing a gun. He ordered the couple out of the car and shot them both, killing Jimmy and leaving Mary seriously injured. This was just the first in a series of brutal attacks that would terrorize Texarkana for months to come. Over the next several weeks, the Phantom Killer struck again and again, targeting couples parked in secluded areas outside of town. His attacks were always swift and brutal, leaving his victims with multiple gunshot wounds. The killer seemed to be targeting young people in their late teens and early 20s, and he always wore a white mask with holes cut out for the eyes. Despite the best efforts of the police, the killer remained at large. The investigation into the Texarkana Moonlight murders was one of the most extensive in American history at the time. The FBI was called in to assist local law enforcement, and hundreds of suspects were interviewed. However, despite numerous leads, the killer was never identified. There were several suspects, including a mentally ill man named Yowell Swinney and a veteran named Orville Henry. However, no one was ever charged with the murders. The Texarkana Moonlight murders had a lasting impact on the town and on American culture as a whole. The case received widespread media attention and inspired several movies, books, and TV shows. It also led to changes in the way that law enforcement agencies investigate serial crimes. The case is still studied by law enforcement officials and criminologists today as they try to unravel the mystery of the Phantom Killer. The Phantom Killer's attacks had a profound impact on the residents of Texarkana. The town, which had once been a peaceful and safe place, was now gripped by fear. Residents were afraid to go out at night, and many began carrying weapons for protection. The local movie theater even stopped showing horror movies for fear of causing panic among the audience. In the months following the attacks, the town implemented a curfew and established a volunteer patrol to keep the streets safe at night. The Phantom Killer's legacy would be felt in Texarkana for decades to come. The Texarkana Moonlight murders received widespread media attention, both nationally and internationally. News outlets around the world covered the case, and the story was featured in several magazines, including Life and Time. The killer's white mask became a symbol of terror, and many people became fascinated with the case. The case also inspired several movies, books, and TV shows, including The Town That Dreaded Sundown, a 1976 horror film that is based on the Phantom Killer's attacks. The investigation into the Texarkana Moonlight murders was one of the most extensive in American history at the time. The FBI was called in to assist local law enforcement, and hundreds of suspects were interviewed. Despite numerous leads, the killer was never identified or caught. However,